you did, you little jerk!
What's going on, jerk faces? Welcome to another brand new episode of the Circle of Jerks podcast. We're going to be reviewing some great sci-fi classics today, and you're probably wondering, what the heck is my dad doing here? Isn't that the guy that does all the car films? Well, these are ones that he chose. So we're welcome back, Dad, to the podcast. We're excited to have you to talk about these great movies.
Thanks, son. Yeah, everyone else can just call me Bruce.
Yeah. And, how are you doing? It's good to see you again, as always.
Thanks. It's good to be here. I'm always honored to be chosen for your podcast. And I'm excited to talk about the movies.
Yeah, we're going to be doing Galaxina from 1980 and 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I think Andy and I have touched on briefly, but it's a movie that deserves special attention. So we're going to be revisiting that. I don't think people are going to mind that. Do you think so, Andy?
Even if they do, tough nuts, because this is our podcast.
That's true too. But yeah, why don't we? How did you come to Galaxina, Dad? Like, how did you first come to this film?
It was I was 25. It had Dorothy Stratton in it.
Enough
Who
said.
was a Playmate of the Year. And it had Avery Schreiber in it, who I had grown up seeing Burns and Schreiber as comic teams on various variety shows. And it wound up being I'm not a big sci-fi guy, as you alluded to. And the fact that it skewers those other sci-fi movies and parodies them, it became a personal favorite because, what were you guys thinking watching Star Wars and Star Trek and those other low-budget movies,
Yeah.
So anything else, if you hold those near and dear, you might be offended. But if you have a good, it was funny while I was reading up on it, people say, oh, the jokes are delivered deadpan. Well, yeah, that's the whole point of it. They're deadpan because you have to let the joke run itself. They're not comics standing around. It's situation comedy. And
there's no laugh track behind it. That's not the point.
And then the whole I don't want to go too far into the movie, but obviously there's two vehicle relations in there, and one got cut from a lot of cuts. I didn't see it. If it happens, it goes by really quick. But I remember seeing it. It was just a quick sight gag, and I'll get to it. It's when they start the rocket ship, they use a Volkswagen key. And
really?
the old VW keys were flat keys, but they had the VW logo cut in them. And it was just those types of things that run through the movie that just like a Volkswagen key for the rocket ship. That's great. And I'm, Dorothy Stratton in her outfit.
God, they poured her into that suit.
I think they painted it on her.
She was trying to get taken seriously as an actress, so she was very specific. There would be no sex or no nudity.
Well, that was Playboy that because she would have done it, but it was Playboy that didn't. Or that she was under contract. She couldn't.
Yeah. Playboy had exclusive rights to her movie.
Well, might be two views. Hey, the internet has more than two sources. What I read is that she was trying to get taken seriously and moved beyond her Playmate of the Year status.
That's also that's also probably true too. It's Andy, I'm assuming this is your first time watching Galaxina, right?
It is indeed.
um, this is I've probably watched it probably as much as my dad has. I because he enjoyed it. Obviously, I ended up watching it. Um, yeah, the movie was produced by Crown International Pictures. They have produced a lot of numerous low budget films that have been displayed on Mystery Science Theater 3000. So I'm very well aware of Crown International. Um, Actually, you're talking about how the film skewers a lot of those sci-fi classics that people love. Well, the funny thing is, a lot of the people that were on the cast and crew worked on Star Wars. They worked on Alien. They worked with John Carpenter. They worked on a lot of these films. So it's kind of funny that they and actually a lot of the extra like masks and stuff that are used throughout the film, those are leftover Star Wars masks. So it's definitely
Yeah, another sci-fi franchise. I think the main villain was using like an old school Cylon mask from the old TV show Battlestar
yeah.
Galactica.
I thought that too. So that's also could obviously it's alluding to making fun of Darth Vader, but I was thinking about like, God, that looks like Doctor Doom or like or one of the Cylons from um Star Battlestar Galactica, like the 70s version.
Yeah.
Um, I'm reviewing my notes. Actually, the laser sound effects were borrowed from Battlestar Galactica, and the door sound effects were taken from Star Trek.
No way. All
I
right.
thought I thought I thought those door whooshes had a familiar tone.
Yeah. Oh, that that's interesting. The movie was directed by William Sachs. Now he's kind of done. He hasn't done anything in a while. His more famous films were The Incredible Melting Man. That's what got him noticed by Crown International, and they ended up doing. Once Crown got a hold of him, he ended up doing a movie called Van Nuys Boulevard, which I'm sure I've seen, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
Great. You got to be a Valley Rat to love that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, that was him. That was produced by Crown and by the director of this movie. And then that was once there was that movie had some success, and so it's like, hey, we want you to make a western. And as Will Sachs was starting to write the screenplay or work on the screenplay, he realized, when he was looking at the theater kiosks and stuff, it's like no one's going to watch a western anymore. Why don't we? And seeing like that, there's all these sci-fi films. Well, why don't we just do a sci-fi western? And it's like, well, but we're going to do a different take on it. We're going to make it, we're going to make it a parody.
and they do get the Western town in there.
That is that.
Yeah,
Like I said,
yeah, very familiar Western Town. I'm pretty sure that was Paramount Ranch.
yep,
Was
yep.
it?
Exactly. You're exactly right, Andy. That's Paramount Ranch. Actually, a lot of the scenes were filmed at Paramount Ranch.
Hmm.
And did you see the Batmobile there?
Yes, yes, I did.
Yeah.
Again, those little things just crack me up because they were so out of place.
And they were able to get it really cheap because the Batmobile did not run. So it just sat in the background. They had some aliens
Yeah.
working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They also were going to have William Sachs. He was inspired a lot by the spaghetti westerns, like Sergio Leone, and a lot of those films. He also loved like Italian neorealism, so he did have like a lot of those old spaghetti western influence there, and they were trying to have some like grand orchestral music for like the battle scenes and stuff like that, but because of time and budget, they're like, nope, can't do that. So they ended up cutting that part out of it. But yeah, that's just some like a little bit like the background of how the film got made. It's just we can kind of get into some of the story and as we talk about Dorothy Stratton, some of the real tragedy that is her story, because it's really sad.
Yeah.
Sure.
Andy, why don't you give us a synopsis of Galaxina?
All right. All right, Galaxy. Synopsis for Galaxina. When an interstellar police cruiser is sent to recover a precious blue crystal in the 31st century, crew member and android Galaxina is left alone as the others are put into suspended animation as part of the mission. While bumbling Captain Cornelius Butt and the others sleep the years away, Galaxina begins to fall in love with the pilot of the vessel, Sergeant Thor, and their romance is complicated when a strange alien life form appears.
I don't know about you, Andy. Did you remember that Futurama episode about like the with the androids that would take on the visage of celebrities, and they would have all those PSAs about like humans and robots getting together?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With
That's exactly what.
robosexuals.
You're sick.
Yeah, it was funny because you had like the robot creature hold have like a conversion camp, but like he was kind of getting like and there was like a treatment, quote unquote, where like you're supposed to like the robots were supposed to attack these effigy human beings, but it was almost indistinguishable from them like fooling around, and it seemed like the robot creature was like kind of getting off on that.
Yeah, that's. But yeah, so this movie stars Stephen Mock. This is his first film that plays Sergeant Thor. He was top billed. Avery Schreiber was Captain Cornelius Butt. Awesome name. He's part of it. He's great comedian. JD Hidden played Buzz. He's the guy that wore the Dodger the no sleeves Dodger uniform with the cowboy hat. I couldn't find anything else that he's been in. And of course, Dorothy Stratton, 1980s Playmate of the Year. And yeah, like a lot, like, well, outside of Dorothy Stratton, a lot of these guys, they have been in a bunch of like TV and like movies, haven't really done anything in a while. But yeah, it's kind of just starts off as very Star Trek esque with the captain's log or was it galactic log something?
Yeah. 3 paragraphs long, just going on and not having much.
They even had a opening crawl.
At the beginning, you get the
Yeah.
story, the scrolling story, kind of spoofing Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is the first film to kind of to spoof that.
Right, yeah. Whereas I'm not Steven George Lucas, his was like an homage, like the old serials that used to
Right.
do that. Yeah, this movie clearly was doing it more as a spoof.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we get like the crew. They're a bunch of space police, and we see them kind of in their ship sitting back, and you have the spaceship shaped like a bird that flies by rather quickly, and it's kind of like it's essentially like a police chase. It's like, and you have um, Buzz, who is like, oh yeah, he's all excited to chase down
Right,
the
yeah.
bad guy.
He's like the rookie that's like ready for some action all the time, and just wanting to pop his like first pop his cherry, so to speak.
Yeah, and Sergeant Thor is doing his like little elliptical thing. Obviously, can't count. He's, and when he's like, "Oh, can I hit the siren, Sarge?" It's like you can't, you can't hear the sirens in space, you idiot.
Right. Yeah, that was so great. That was like I actually laughed out loud.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that also goes. That's another Alien spoof because their whole theatrical poster is like no one in space can hear you scream.
In space, no one can hear you scream, and it was, I watch these sci-fi movies, but I'm not a fan. So, but when they were referenced in Galaxy, and oh, nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a greater
Described
appreciation.
as Captain Cornelius Butt, or Corny Butt as he is called.
Corny butt.
You know, perfect name for him, and he's, you know, the buffoon, but he's trying to straighten up the little kid, and Buzz, he's not the little kid, but the young
Yeah, he's
buck,
the
if you
rookie. He's
will.
the rookie on the team.
Yeah, and yeah, that line, you know, that's probably, you know, just the first of many that just get me rolling. Oh man, that's
Right off the bat, you know, it's just like fun, like little jokes that they throw
yeah.
out.
Nobody can hear the siren in space.
Yeah.
Not
But
sure why we have it, but okay.
yeah. But they fly down they fly down the ship, and actually the way that they did that was they were gonna initially try to do like a 3D hologram thing, but because of budget, there was like, well, why we can just do this in 2D, and so they shot it with like a reverse mirror, and they kind of like muddied the shot a little bit, so it kind of looks like it's just this weird hologram, but it's actually through a set of mirrors and that's how they were able to kind of capture that.
Okay.
Uh, So that was just kind of interesting how it totally works. It
Yeah.
does look like uh, a great hologram scene, and then yeah, that's where we meet the bad guy of the film. Crap, what was his name? I
Hang
forgot. I
on.
forgot the name of the.
Yeah.
We're all looking this up because
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Ordric. Ordric. That's the guy. That's the bad guy's name is Ordric. Like
Okay.
Lord
Okay.
Ordric. Which you know the kind of also similar to how they did it with Star Wars. They have a guy in the suit, and the voice is somebody different.
Right.
So I don't know, you know, if they did that on purpose or just like I'm sure they did. Um, but anyways, like, oh, I'm on a mission for a peace mission, and it's like, well, can you tell me what it is? And no, and he ends up like running off, and they end up I think they end up like losing sight of him, but then they get told, well, this guy is going to this planet like Altair 1, and he's up to no good. He's going after the blue star, and there's also another great running gag where oh, and like everyone
Oh
like
yeah,
looks.
yeah. Every time like
Oh,
the name Blue Star is uttered, it's like chorus from on high, and
oh,
Yes.
it's a great running gag.
Star.
And
yeah. It was.
um
Did you notice that when it was the biker game, it was more like doo-woppy?
yes. So okay, there's two things. There's the doo-wop version, and there's also I think when there was another one where they did like more. There was like two different versions of it, and yeah, there's I do love like the if you're not paying attention, you'll miss that. But it's like this fun little thing, um, and like at the end of the movie too, like when it's like we got the blue star, and everyone's like, wait, where is it?
Yeah.
I said we have the blue star. Whoa! Yes. So so they end up having to go after Ordric and find the blue star. Uh and but it's gonna take them like 20 some years to
27.
27 years to reach the planet. It's like I'm gonna be gone for 50 some years? It's like, well, yeah. It's like, that's part of the deal. It's like, well, I mean, you could quit, but then you'd still be on the ship, but you just won't get paid for those those years. Everyone's think of the overtime, man. Yeah, and it's like, oh, thank you, Cornelius Flood is like, oh, thank you for giving us this illustrious honor. It's like, well, you guys were just the closest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, But after that, let's say, okay, well, you're given a 24-hour period to hang out down at I forgot what the planet was, the prostitute planet.
Right.
And it's like, all right, it's like at least we get that.
Call it a brothel.
Right.
Yeah,
Much classier.
Well, I mean, if you're
which
not
is
gonna nut for 27 years, you might as well.
Yeah.
man.
And they're the little chant when they find out they're going to the brothel. Porno, 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 patrol, and he'll port in a storm and he'll hole.
Oh
It's
yeah,
celebrating.
there was actually like a slight disagreement, like because it was Stephen Mock and Avery Schreiber. It's like, well, it's Horno Patrol. It's like, no, it should be Porno Patrol. It's like, and the director's like, why don't you just both do your own thing? It's fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Like, and so
Yeah.
like one says porno, one says porno, and it works. And yeah, like I was saying, a lot of those masks were left over from Star Wars filming,
Wow.
and like like I said, a lot of the cast that was working on the film was from Star Wars, so they had access to the masks. They got them for, I think, free.
Nice.
So hey, it's a budgetary thing, and it looked great. You know what I was thinking of, what it reminded me of. I think it was Total Recall. Like that whole like bar scene in Total
Oh yeah,
Recall
with
with all.
the Chinese guy.
Yeah,
With the
yeah,
with the
it's
with
like
the
that.
with the prostitute that he was with. Like she had the three knockers.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, it reminded me a little bit of that, and like the Star Wars cantina scene. It's just like
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Total Recall got the idea from this movie.
oh, they absolutely did. They absolutely did. Um, and so obviously our characters have a good old time. You have a couple of the crew members that are below deck. You have our Batwing guy and the Asian guy who's always high. Let's see. After that, they end up starting their journey to Altair 1. They go into their cryosleep stage. Oh no, actually, sorry. Before this, uh, the Captain Corny Butt, Sergeant Thor, and Buzz have kind of like one final meal together, and served by Galaxina. And this is where the love between Sergeant Thor and Galaxina begins. But they have their pill dinner. It's like, it's whatever. It's like their steak pill, and they have their wine. And Captain Cornelius Butt has this egg, and it's like, and everyone's like, ew, like it looks like an avocado. To be honest, it looks really weird.
Right.
But it like, because apparently at this point in time, eggs are either extinct or kind of like looked down that you would eat eggs. But he cracks open the egg, puts it
Or
in.
they're like really far away from like actually eating the flesh. Like everything comes in pill form, so it's
Oh yeah, you know what? That's probably what it is.
yeah.
And so he drinks the egg, and then that's where you start to like. I was like, oh, this got to be like that scene that it's
The
based off of
aliens,
Alien,
yeah.
right? The chest burster, because he starts shaking and like being held down by Thor and Buzz, and all of a sudden he just spits up this alien. And because I think a lot of people are probably saying, "Oh crap, it's gonna burst out of his chest," and you're just like an alien. But it's a parody, so it doesn't. It just flies out of his mouth. And our little alien creature is gonna come play into the story later. We also witness, we start to see Galaxina more, and we kind of see her like in this. It's almost like Galaxy. I almost thought like when I was younger that Galaxina was kind of like the in control of the ship, because she has like this special chair. I don't know if it's like a charging dock or something for her. They actually did a full on mold of Dorothy Stratton sitting in there, so like it's actually molded to her. And the way that they lit it is that they painted it with some special paint, so that way when it would be hit with a certain light, it would just
Oh yeah, it's
Go
kind of
right.
like the blackout scarf. Um, it's it's I forget who developed it, but like a lot of celebrities are now wearing it because it's like it's a
Oh,
reflective material. So when a photographer, like a paparazzi's flash goes off, it'll light up the scarf, and then like it'll like make the celebrity's face like silhouetted.
Hmm.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's called. I forget what it exactly was called, but it's kind of I think it's called like a blackout scarf. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like kind of like the same way how like reflective your license plate is on your car, so that like when even if a flash went off, like for a picture, the number like the white part will be like really bright, but then the numbers part will be blacked out, so you can still read it.
Hmm.
But yeah, in Galaxina, like a lot of people think that she's a busted unit because she has no speech, and she just kind of walks around in her outfits and is kind of servicing the crew, through feeding them, kind of taking care of stuff, and but later on, as oh, you have something to say, like what
Well,
were you?
it's just during the meal when is it uh,
Oh,
Thor first tries to get friendly with her and reaches over and slaps her behind, he gets an electric shock.
oh,
Hmm.
that's right, yeah.
So she's off limits. As gorgeous as she is, she's not there to be
For their
service them
pleasure.
that way.
Yeah.
And she's cold to the touch. And when you touch, so that's why when they go into cryo sleep, I'll let you continue. She
Oh,
starts working on that.
well, because the other thing too is like Thor also is like I can't stop thinking about her, and he ends up going in for I was like he's like I have to kiss you, Galaxina. I know I know what it's gonna do to me, but I just have to do it. And he's like shocks himself nearly to death, and it's like totally worth it, man. But then so they end up going into cryo sleep. Um, And this is kind of like, this is a scene right out of Aliens, the crew going into cryo sleep for a number of years. But in comes our alien that we couldn't find before. And I remember like I could never figure out like what the hell is that noise that we hear in the ship? And it's like or what but it turns it's the alien and he's going, Mama, Mama, that's what that sound is. And he thinks of Captain Cornelius Butt as his mother, and he messes with his cryo tank, where it's like he so while he's still in there sleeping, it messes with like the time. So like he's aging, those
Right. Yeah.
27 years.
It doesn't fully put him in suspended animation, so like he still kind
Yeah,
of ages those 27 years.
which is I think really hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and then, like he comes out like 27 years older and looking like a sheepdog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the other thing too that I found funny was that because obviously he's like very kind of serious and kind of not arrogant, but he's very prideful. But now he comes out, he's like all has hair everywhere. He looks like a sheepdog, and his mind is also not fully. He's definitely losing a step.
Right. Yeah. I mean, before the cryo sleep, like he had more you know he had like a lot like there's more grandeur in his thinking of himself.
Yeah. Oh, and well, before all this happens too, there's also a great for whatever reason because it is a police cruiser. They do have a creature on board, the Rock Eater, that Schreiber's character Cornelius Spud always throws rocks at, like, and kind of teases and gives him all his dad jokes. And that was kind of the point that they were trying to go with is they wanted to have. I forgot who was that put in all those dad jokes. They thought that was super hilarious, and it's like uh, so they wanted to kind of throw that in there. Um, okay, so they go through the they throughout this time, Galaxina is learning how to change her settings. She's watching things to learn speech patterns. And she, through the course of like changing her voice and finding her voice, she's talking about like how, oh, I love you, Sergeant Thor. And when she wakes up, or when she wakes the crew up when they reach Altair 1, it's Galaxina has changed that she's warmed her touch. She no longer shocks Sergeant Thor, and she's able to talk. And I think this is where they know that the blue star is on Altair 1, but I forget like what was. It was a place that was unfriendly to humans, so they send Galaxina down to the planet. And how they filmed this was actually really interesting, because they wanted to do something different, but they didn't really have anything for like special effects. Their budget was gone. Well, what they found was this special film from Kodak where it would pick up heat signatures. It was like Kodachrome film,
Right.
and they bought like a whole bunch from some crew that did not use all of the film that they hit, or all of it that they had bought. So they think they got like 50,000 feet of this stuff, and you have to freeze this film, and you can't like until like you're right about ready to use it. Dorothy Stratton had to have special makeup put on, so otherwise they would see
Right.
through
Yeah,
her
because the colors
skin.
would be different. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where like kind of that weird like orangish red glow comes from. Is from that
Right. Yeah, because it's
weird.
yeah, I think it's infrared film.
Yeah, it's so weird. Uh, so that's how like why everything looks so strange.
Right.
Uh,
And I think in the movie they explained it as this planet isn't bombarded with more like infrared light. So it's
yeah,
like yeah, for some reason, and like I don't know why, but it's like just more harmful to humans or something.
yeah. So they brought in Galaxina to take care of that problem. And this is the part where the film, it's on Paramount Ranch. It's one of their like western towns that they had on there. We get to see the Batmobile. So for a split second. And we go into they're looking for a guy who knows where the location of the blue star is, and turns out when she goes into the bar, it's a human bar. Oh, great! You have Spock, or what do they call him, Mister?
Spot. They call him Mr. Spot.
Oh, Mr. Spot. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Because I know
yeah,
my dad
clearly
likes Star.
a parody of Mr. Spock from the original series Star Trek.
I have to say, he looks pretty good. He could pull off a Spock.
Yeah, it's like the kind of non-branded like multicolored superhero, like instead of like Power Rangers, like it's like it's like multicolored Space Patrol or something instead of Power Rangers. That's kind of
Yeah,
like that's kind of the vibe that Mr. Spock was to
yeah.
Mr. Spock from Star Trek.
But yeah, no. But it turns out that the guy that Galaxina is looking for has been eaten. He's uh, but anyways, she does end up finding where the blue star is, but it's a trap. Ordric, has gotten hold of the blue star, and thus the battle between him and Galaxina begins to get the blue star. And then they have their kind of like Western battle. This is where you get like all that kind of like the laser shots and stuff that kind of sound like you were talking about Battlestar Galactica, and all that. And that after that, they because she runs away. I forget like what she runs away and gets kidnapped by this gang, this cultish gang. Now, funny story about the leader of this gang. He actually was a member of the Manson family. I forget what his real name was, but he changed his name to like something like um Delphi Aquarius or some crazy name, and had become a part of the Manson family right before a lot of the criminal activity started. And then he's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna get the hell out of here. And I was like, what? He was no way. But then after that, he ended up becoming an actor, and but yeah, so he's the leader of this biker gang in on Altair One, and they worship the great Harley David son. I'll let you talk more about this. I know this is your favorite part of the film.
It's interesting. Yeah, so it's your typical religious fanatics, Harley, David, Son, our Lord and Master, our Raven image, please protect us. Arum, Arum, Arum. And I took it at face value, a bunch of religious lunatics worshiping Harleys, which, I ride a Harley. But I actually, in, in my research, they actually worship the Holy Trinity of Ollie Davidson, not only a subtle reference to the three original branches of Abrahamic faith, Muslim, Ali being common Arabic name, which means high or elevated, Jewish, the Star of David, and Christian, the Son of God. It bears phonetic resemblance to Harley Davidson. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
That's interesting. That they might have thought. I imagine they did that.
I think it's Harley Davidson, and I swear if when I become a indoctrined minister of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, I'm going to use that as my chant.
That's
So,
fascinating, to be honest. I would have never guessed that.
yeah, but yeah, I do. I enjoy that, and you heard that so many times before you ever saw the movie.
Oh yeah.
Out in the garage building the Sportster and stuff, Harley, David, Son, our Lord and Master, our Raven image, please protect us. All we need is Kool-Aid and some satin robes. We've got it. Cole.
Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention too is that Altair One was a human penal colony, similar to like Australia was, and it's very it's one of those things where when you watch a lot of these like dystopian films where like I think of like the sequel to Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, where they're worshiping like it's a nuclear missile, and it's like, but it's no, they don't really understand what it is, but and over time they've given this story. And similar to this, like of course there was probably like some biker gangs, they brought their motorcycles there, and for whatever reason, like over time the knowledge of was lost, and they created this new legend, this, and thought of it as like, oh wow, this technology that we don't have anymore, it must be something magical or holy, and so it's very possible that like something like this could happen. Like I said, it's hilarious and also very plausible at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite part of the film. But they end up strapping Galaxina to I think it's a telescope, or something. I thought at first I always thought it was like an airplane wing that they strapped her to, but I guess it's a telescope that they.
Okay.
I always thought it was I always thought it was like some sort of tank, like liquid, like some sort of liquid storage tank.
I've heard telescope. It looks like an airplane wing, but it could very well be a tank too, like a water tank of some
Mhm.
sort. Not important, but like yeah. So they end up strapping her to this, and when Galaxina doesn't return, the great Sergeant Thor and Buzz decide like, well, we gotta go find her, and so they end up looking around, and there's this great scene when they end up going to the same bar, and it's like, oh man, great! Look, isn't this awesome, Sarge? They have a great human bar, and you see the menu of like all these like human parts that they're serving. It's like, oh, um, it's like great job, Buzz. Let's get the
Yeah.
hell out of here. um, so they end up escaping there. They find Galaxina strapped to the wherever she's strapped to. They release her, and to make their they get accosted by the biker gang, the biker cult, and they end up stealing the great Harley David son to escape. Which how they figure out how to operate that thing, because I'm sure they haven't ridden a motorcycle, but who cares? It's not important. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
no, getting away with our Lord and Master. It's like,
Yeah.
don't
Don't try to squeeze your logic into this movie.
it's like, no, don't do no harm to our Lord and Master Harley Davidson, but we have to go after them. And that's so they escape on
Yeah, the motorcycle.
on
Although I
motorcycle.
figured that it's just because like there weren't any more gas stations, like they dare not ride it because after they ride it, it's like no more gas.
Oh, that's also a possibility.
You know
That's
that's
a
that's
I
why
didn't
that's why the bike like the supposed biker gang like cult, they ride the horses, but they had like the handlebars to affect like the motorcycle.
Oh yeah, that's the other touch on it that I was like, that's awesome. That they it's so great. Uh, but our three protagonists, they end up escaping. They have the blue star, and they get on the ship. Yeah, yeah, they get on the ship, and they end up kind of like, oh great, we have our another 27-year journey to get back. And the one thing is, it was funny about the ship, because if only they had a newer ship that would have a hyperdrive, so it would
Yeah.
take much less time. But that's not funny. Hyperdrive. That's not funny. Them having to take this long journey to get there, much more funny. And they start to go off, and it's like, job well done, guys. Let's go on home. And unfortunately, our friend the Rock Eater, who has now become a part of the crew, decides to start chomping down on the blue stuff. So they end up, yeah, they end up having. And this is the part of the movie where it's like, yes, we have the blue star, and everyone starts looking around, like waiting for the sign. And it's like, I said, we have the blue star, and then we get our uh, and but our rock eating friend starts to eat the blue star. They end up having to turn back around, and thus ends the film. Andy, I'm sure that is how Andy felt the entire time he was watching this film.
Pretty much. Good. I mean, all right. That's. I don't care, like if it was like a parody or whatever, but yeah, it was hard to watch just because like it started kind of, not that it's a huge thing, but it started forgetting like its own rules. At first, it was just kind of like kind of tongue in cheek, making fun of like all of these science science adventure like TV shows or like movies like Star Wars. Okay, but then now like they're getting into like the absurd, where like you had like like the it's like, oh, blue stars, like, oh, and like and kind of like breaking the fourth wall, and just like, hey, like why is like when the music didn't play, that's when it was,
I'll tell you somewhat as to why that is. They were scheduled for a 20-day shoot, but there was actually for whatever there was a lot of unseasonable rain in California at the time when they were filming this, and so they constantly their sets kept flooding. So they ended up having to build like an aqueduct system to get rid of all the water so it wouldn't interrupt filming. And they ended up losing I think like 3 or 4 days. And instead of just like, kind of just letting, oh, okay, we'll take an extra 4 days. The one of the producers ended up ripping out like several pages of the script. And it's like, just make it work somehow. Which is, this is a typical of Crown International. We don't have time for an extra 4 days.
right. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it started off as like kind of like this tongue in cheek, like wink, you know, uh, kind of parody, but then like yeah, it just kind of devolved and like it forgot like all its logic and like like this
Wow.
like the blue star like became kind of like part of like it be, they and no like it started becoming in on the joke, and that like it was like I was getting really annoyed, but
The other thing that they couldn't decide upon was whether they were going to make this a R-rated film or like a PG-13 rated film. And so they had like scenes where they had the swears and where they didn't have the swears. And
right.
it's like they couldn't
Well, I'm
figure out.
guessing from the hollow boobies, they went the R route, the R route.
They go the R route, but think about it. There was time lost because they had to shoot a couple scenes twice, just because, or several times over because they couldn't decide what they were going to do. And I think it had they one stuck to like, okay, this is going to be an R-rated film. Two, we're going to give them the extra 4 days and not rip out a good chunk of the script. It might have been. It's still going to be a low budget film, but it's at least it'd be a little bit more together.
I'm hurt by Andy's comments, but I
He's never
wonder.
conning
I
in it.
do watch it, and it's such a parody. I can't help thinking, could MST3K make fun of this or not? Is it already making fun of itself, which is the joke? It doesn't take itself too seriously. The other thing we didn't mention, all through the space scene, there are various scenes, they're seen watching a movie. It's another Crown International movie for Spaceship on Venus. It's a
Oh,
1960
that
Eastern Bloc sci-fi film.
Yeah, that has been on MST3K. That movie is awful.
Okay. um, so, any of your viewers who haven't seen it yet, who after listening to this blistering review of it, I found out they should seek out the Budget UK DVD as it features the full uncut film, and they cut about 10 minutes out, which might be where the VW key scene is. And there's another scene. It's funny, you see these movies when they first come out, and then they do director cuts, and then they repackage it, and scenes come and go, and you go, wait, there used to be a scene. Did you cut it out for? And it was 2 seconds. But anyhow, seek out the UK PAL full uncut DVD, and go find it, go watch it, and I think they should.
The sad part of this is really Dorothy Stratton's story, though. Like, and this is where I think this is actually somewhat of an important movie in history, just because Dorothy Stratton was someone that was on her way up.
Yeah, she was a rising star.
She was a rising star, and she took on this movie. I think this was her first movie. She may have done a few other things, but like
I
this is
think
her.
Was it her first or her second?
And that I don't remember, but like the thing is, like, but this was going to be her kind of like her breaking out in a sense, like, because this is
Yes.
because she may have done like some other like TV stuff, so I don't think this is her first acting gig, but it's
Nope.
not.
See, Dorothy Stratton's first sci-fi role, she played Miss Cosmos in the Buck Rogers in the 25th Century Cruise Ship to the Stars in 1979.
Oh, okay. So never mind. This is not her first film. But anyways, this was, it was, but this is a film where she was really being discovered. This is
Yeah.
kind of like her first real big breakout. And uh, she was kind of in this, she had a really weird marriage. The guy that she was married to, that she was married to was kind of a little bit of a creep. For one, he had kind of groomed her when she was a teenager, and ended up kind of getting her into kind of into Playboy, and uh, pretty much had her in a very abusive relationship. He would always come, whenever he was around, she would kind of like clam up, and there was a lot of times where when he wasn't on set, she would be like, she's a lot happier, and but whenever he would come on set, she would clam up. She'd come to set crying, and they end up having to ban her husband off of the set because they're like, no, you're hindering our shoot,
Production,
so
yeah.
you're out. She also began an affair with director Peter Bogdanovich. He, famed famed director from The Last Picture Show, Paper Moon, bunch of stuff. And he actually was going to have her star after this movie. She was going to be in a movie called what the hell was it, with John Ritter, and a bunch of Audrey Hepburn was in it. I'm trying to think of I think it's like They Only Live Once. I think that was the movie that she was going to be in. Let's see. They all laughed. That's what the movie she was going to be in with us. That was directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and he's also kind of a weird dude. But he from the very beginning was talking about how Galaxina is. I'm the one that should be discovering her. This movie sucks, and like pretty much like was kind of derailing the movie right from the very beginning, and which caused he's at this point is a pretty big deal in Hollywood, so his word does take a lot of weight, and but contrary to like what was rumored, Dorothy Stratton was taken care of very well. She loved being on the film. She even got a vanity plate on her car for Galaxina. She was super excited to be on the film. She had a lot of fun, and yeah, and she started this affair with Peter Bogdanovich, and she ended up getting a divorce from her husband. And while they were still trying to settle things, she was trying to like kind of do it in a nice way, try to still be friends with him, all this sort of thing. And he, like a crazy person, ended up shooting her. God, I heard he shot her with like a 12 gauge shotgun in the face
Oh
at
shit.
nearly point blank range. So so she's dead, and he ends up killing himself. And when her death happened when the day Galaxina debuted,
Hmm.
which they ended up taking the movie out of theaters. Galaxina was out of theaters. Uh, this Peter Bogdanovich was still doing post production on They All Laughed, and both movies really suffered. As far Galaxina was out of theaters for like 3 or 4 months before they ended up re-releasing it. They All Laughed suffered because Peter Bogdanovich said that I was in so distraught over what happened, like he just wasn't focused. understandably so, I would guess. And uh, he panned, like, he really lashed out at a lot of things. Like, he wrote a whole book about Dorothy Stratton. All the movies that came out about the story, he kind of went after. He had this scathing, like, his book, it was kind of scathed, Playboy, and said that, Hugh Hefner had raped her and all this stuff. And it was just a huge mess. And I think, like, later on, Peter Bogdanovich ended up getting together with her younger sister, who I think at the time was like 13 or 14, which is really gross. But he ended up marrying her younger sister, and there was a lot of controversy behind that. Um, and when Galaxina did end up getting re-released in theaters, Peter Bogdanovich came after Crown International, saying, like, "Oh, you're just trying to profit off of her death and all that." So I was like, "No, we're not trying to profit off of her death. We didn't say, like, oh, starring the late Dorothy Stratton. We're not doing that." But Galaxina actually did end up making. I think it did end up making a profit in the end. They All Laughed was a huge bomb. And actually, it did bankrupt at the time. It did bankrupt Peter Bogdanovich at the time. I think he did end up recovering, but
Yeah.
just, yeah, really, really messy story, and really sad. It's this up
Yeah.
and coming star who knows how things would have gone for her. Yeah, it's like, who knows?
Yeah. Star 80 is a good movie to see if you want to learn about Dorothy Stratton.
Yeah,
You know,
I haven't seen that. I do kind of want to watch that now, because I've heard that it's pretty good.
yeah. And Dorothy was working at a Dairy Queen in Vancouver when her husband Paul Snyder met her.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyhow, that was Galaxina. Um, you
Andy, I'm
guys,
sorry, I love the movie. I know you're, yeah, you're like, why did you bring me here?
I know. Yeah. I did.
I thought
I
too.
won't be too cruel. I'll just say I didn't enjoy this movie.
Wow.
Not to say that under the right circumstances, I wouldn't, I could find myself enjoying this movie, but generally speaking, I didn't enjoy it. I can see where, they're trying to go with, where they're trying to go towards, but they just missed the mark. Um, I loved Avery Shriver's character. Just like the bombacity of his character.
Oh yeah, he's
Um,
great.
yeah, he's great. Stephen Matchett, who, yeah, you're right. He's kind of a journeyman actor. Like, he's done it all. And yeah, he has done Star Trek stuff. Um,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he has.
yeah. Particularly in one of my favorite iterations of Star Trek, which is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Um, Anyways, and his son Gabriel Match, he's the lead on the kind of like the early teens what is it hit series Suits.
Get out of here. That's
Yeah,
his son.
yeah. He actually, yeah, Stephen Matthew. He even makes a guest appearance on his son's show.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Oh man, I didn't know that was his
Thought
son.
that name was familiar.
I didn't know that
yeah,
was his
Read
son.
it, huh?
yeah. Yeah, his son on the show plays the main kind of one of the main characters, Harvey Specter.
Gabriel Mack. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Wow, that's
no, that
that's
was his son. Wow.
oh,
Wow,
I know.
look how light you guys just both lit up.
Oh no, I had no idea that was Stephen Mack's son. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
that's
Huh.
that's great.
yeah.
Um,
I love him as Harvey Specter. He plays it so good. He reminds me of who's that that old timey actor, Cary Grant. There you go. He reminds me of Cary Grant.
oh yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, he does have a Cary Grant vibe to him. I assume that you will not be revisiting this film anytime soon, Andy.
Not anytime soon.
It might grow on you if you see it again. You might begin to appreciate the depth of the subtle humor and the. It's not for everyone, I guess.
Yeah. Again, Bruce. Let me be clear. I don't hate this movie. All right. I don't hate it like I hate The Last Jedi. All right. Yeah. It just wasn't that enjoyable for me. There were aspects to the movie that I did enjoy. Yeah, for sure. But overall, as like a cohesive piece of work, I found it lacking.
It's a B movie. It's
Right? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
enjoy the small scenes tied together. One of the reviews I read, it's like if you took a bad porno movie and cut out all the sex, you're just left with the really crappy scenes. And I thought, wow, that was kind of harsh. That sounds like something Andy would say.
That does sound like something I would say.
The reviews, it was not well received commercially.
Right.
Nobody made their career on it. So you're not alone. I'm probably in the minority and enjoying it just because the humor is so corny. And Robert was unfortunately afflicted with living with me when he was young, so he has the same offbeat, twisted humor.
Right. It's like that old it's that old 80s PSA, I learned it from watching you, Dad.
Yeah. I don't know when did we start watching Mystery Science Theater 3000? Because was that you that started watching, or was it me? And we both fell in love with it. I know that, but I cannot.
I don't know. It's just like I think you probably watched it first, but maybe I don't know. It's one of those things that just we connected with, like, oh, this is cool. We have to, that should be us down there wisecracking through the movie. We're
Yeah,
not that funny, we're not that witty, but
yeah, because we watched stuff like Galaxina. We would watch like a lot of these like not great B sci-fi films, B horror films, B kind of like and some of the movies I do really I have seen them non MST3K versions of, and it was like this is great, this is great stuff, and it's like
they make a lot of movies that were terrible. They make them top palatable.
yeah. And it's like I said, one of my favorite episodes was them doing Santa Claus versus the Devil, which is an awful movie, but
Yes.
it's so funny because they made it funny. And this is kind of like this is a film that like it just kind of brings me back to that time watching Mystery Science Theater 3000, and that's why I love this movie. It's and I know it's not for everybody, but damn, it's just a movie that I love.
Good.
Why don't we get to our main feature of the night?
Gonna hold up fingers or something, or have we already gotten the subliminal score that?
Oh, do we want to give our scores for Galaxina first before we move on to?
I would usually do it at the end.
Well, I'm talking to Andy. Like, Andy, what do you want to do?
Yeah, we could give it now.
All right, let's give our ratings for Galaxina. We'll give it to the newbie first because this is his first time watching it. Andy, what's your score for Galaxina?
I'm giving it a 2.
Giving it okay. I actually, to be honest, I was thinking you were gonna give it like a 1, maybe a half star.
Yeah. I mean, again, don't get me wrong. There were enjoyable scenes, but overall, as a cohesive piece of work, I didn't enjoy it. I did not enjoy it.
Now, for my score, like I said, I understand this is not everyone's cup of tea, but as far as the enjoyability factor for myself, I'm probably gonna give this a 3.5. I think it's if you like if you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000, if you're a fan of parody films, this is one that I think you should check out because I think, and the story behind it is really, it's tragic and sad and very interesting at the same time. Because we have like this great up and coming star, Dorothy Stratton, who was basically killed, right after they finished doing the film. And like I said, if you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Riff Tracks or anything like that, you'll like this film a lot.
I'm probably going to go with you, Robert. Give it like a 3.5. I'm not a huge fan of Star Wars, Star Trek, uh, any of those other movies. I know there are other parodies that do it better, Barbarella and stuff. I enjoy it. The backstory.
Barbarella.
Huh?
I like this way more than Barbarella.
Um, I, the backstory, the tragedy behind Dorothy Stratton, the whole Harley Davidson scene, the parody that it pokes at all these sci-fi movies that I watch, and I just roll my eyes and go, I can't sit through an hour and a half of, okay, there was, I know it wasn't Star Trek or Star Wars, but Harrison Ford hides in a refrigerator while the nuclear blast goes off. I roll my eyes, I
we
can't
don't
sit
talk
through
about
this.
that.
Yeah, we don't talk about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
That movie sucks ass.
So I'm going to give it a 3.5. I like it. It's not for everybody, but it should be seen at least once, I think, so you can worship properly at Harley Davidson and, get the uncut version with the VW key starting the rocket ship, and in space nobody can hear the police siren, and just enjoy it. You and the dog can sit there and you both walk away feeling good afterwards.
Yeah. Well, that's our review on Galaxina. Let's move on to our main feature, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I'm gonna go out on a limb. I think Andy might have liked this movie a lot better. I'm just gonna say, maybe I'm. But this is also one of my dad's choices, and this I'm actually really curious as to when he first watched this, and why does he like this film so much?
You want to start with that?
Well, how did you first come to 2001?
Well, the movie.
The movie, yeah.
Oh, it came out in 1968. I was 13 years old. I was living at home. I hadn't yet been thrown out. As I recall, my dad piled us all in 68. We probably had a Volkswagen or the 62 Impala, and we all went down and saw it, as I recall, at the Pacific Cinerama Dome.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was a big theater release and Cinerama Dome and the sound. And I know you asked if I could get a hold of my friend David Riddle and if we could see it at his place. I've not been able to get a hold of him. I don't know. For Andy's sake, this David Riddle, he's an ex-sound engineer who has a viewing room with 968 speakers in it.
Right. Yeah. I remember you talking about it in the last time.
Okay. So that
Yeah.
Robert wanted to know if we could get in there, and I wasn't able to get a hold of him.
Mm.
But the sound and, yeah, it's sci-fi, so that part of it wasn't really me, but the worshiping the monolith and the apes and evolution versus, religious crap. I enjoyed it, and no offense to people who might be religious who were just offended by that. And the wisecracking computer, Hal. And it's funny, here we are in, let's see, 2022, and I didn't have to stop and think of the year. And how many times does your computer challenge you to ensure that you're not a robot? You know, that the technology it's coming to like 1984, and a lot of these movies that we saw, you're watching them now and you go, wow, that was kind of prophetic. But that's how I came to see it. As I was 13, I was living at home. My dad took us there.
Oh wow, I didn't know it was a whole
And
family deal.
yeah,
Was this the you guys didn't watch like a whole bunch of movies as a family?
no.
So I'm almost curious what your dad, my grandfather, like, what was his reason for for bringing you guys there?
Couldn't tell you. You know, he was a liaison engineer on the early satellites and stuff. Surveyor and the first moon shots. My dad worked on all that stuff. Um, Maybe it was this, because without getting into the film is noted for its realistic space travel.
Yeah,
Um, Maybe that was the connection that took my dad to want to drag us all down to the theater. And it was probably like $6 a head or something to get in back then. um, and then popcorn was another couple of bucks. um, I don't know why he took us. Looking back, that might have been why, is because he worked on the space race,
yeah,
and he kind of had, and he was also very intelligent about his religious beliefs, um, and raised me with religious beliefs, but said, it's just a guide. Don't take it too seriously. um, and with the apes and the evolution, that could have been part of it too. But it was probably the space travel.
yeah. Oh, because I don't know if we on the podcast itself, but I do remember, when we went to the aircraft museum in DC.
Hmm.
You talked to me a lot about, like, how he'd worked on the satellites, kind of where they were monitoring the amount of radiation in space, as they were preparing to try, where the US was preparing to launch into space for in the space race. And this movie, uh, they started filming this, I think, in '65, and it took, all the um, all the post production, like, and stuff. They all the actual scenes with the humans and stuff, that took about a year, but all of the special effects took about another 2 years for that to get filmed, and that's why it ended up coming out in 1968. Uh,
Okay.
and funny thing is, it came out the same month and year as another, arguably, one of the great sci-fi films. One I know you don't like, but Planet of the Apes came out the same month, same year. Uh,
The first one was not as bad as the sequels.
yes, the sequels. There's diminishing returns on the sequels. The first one is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's
Ah,
it's it's great.
okay. Okay.
But that's also
Tolerable
because
for me.
I also, because I love Charlton Heston. That's part of it. But
Okay.
Andy, when did you first come to 2001?
Uh, what is it? I think my science teacher in the sixth grade showed it in class.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and that was like in 96, 97. Um, yeah, but him, he was like a big science nerd, and like he really loved, 2001, and so, I really
Wonder if
didn't
he
care
liked
because
Galaxina.
what was it?
I wonder if he would have liked Galaxina.
I don't know. Yeah, I barely. He was my teacher, but I barely knew the man. I barely knew the man. But yeah, what did I care? It was like, we were watching a movie instead of like going through our textbooks or whatever. So, but yeah, of course, like me being just like you know 11, 12-year-old, I really didn't appreciate the movie, when I first watched it. But then when I watched it again as an adult, it really, I was really captivated at the vision and artistry of Stanley Kubrick, and just what he brought to the movie.
Yeah, I was thinking like this had to have been my first Kubrick film. Like it was probably 2001 because I
Yeah,
know that my
me too.
dad.
Maybe it was Spartacus, or maybe it was around the same time. Because I remember my history teacher, I think he showed us Spartacus too.
Oh wow, yeah, that's also a great movie. But yeah,
Yeah.
I remember my dad. Because he liked 2001. We ended up. I know we watched it together at some point, like when I was younger, and it's a film I've watched many times at this point. I can't even. Yeah, I don't have a number in mind. Um, and I also remember, my grandfather, my mom's dad, was also had like a bunch of films, and when I would go visit him, that was definitely one of the films that we watched, and so I've seen it numerous times. And every time I watch it, I always get something new out of it, and I have something like, oh, I wonder, what's going on here? What's that? And it's a film that does require multiple viewings. It does require, as you get older, you understand more, and the movie become, oh wow, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, 2001 is just, and 54 years later. I mean, this film is 54 years old. It looks almost as good. I would say like just as good, if not better, than some of the films that are coming out today. It still looks amazing. And it's
One
funny.
of the benefits of filming on actual film.
Yeah. The other thing about this too is as great as Kubrick is, and I love pretty much all of his films. I think I've seen almost his entire library now. But this is his only Oscar win, and it was not. He never won for Best Director. He This one won the Oscar for visual effects, and that's the
Mm.
only Oscar he ever won, which it kind of blew my mind a little bit. Um, but yeah, let's get into the start of the movie, and we kind of open up with one thing that's really interesting is Kubrick. His music choice on films is always really good. He's a big fan of classical music, and this is one that doesn't disappoint. Has a very iconic uh, soundtrack. But we start off with the dawn of man, and we have it kind of opens up with this very ominous tone. I think they call it this on the soundtrack. It's called like atmospheres, something like that, where it's just like this very dissonant, uh, ominous tone that's in the film, and uh, Andy, you'll probably it's very similar. Like, and this is where I think Nolan does talk about Kubrick. It's one of his favorite directors, and at the start of The Dark Knight, that weird, that kind of dissonant tone that when we start off that movie,
Mm.
very similar to this. Um,
Mm.
but we have the Dawn of Man scene, like where it's just like in this prehistoric,
Yeah, it's the primordial Earth. Um,
yeah, like 4 million years in the past, and so funny story about this. So a lot of those apes were all like mimes and um, like they're dancers and like mimes and stuff like that.
right.
And Stanley Kubrick is known for his fear of flying. So he did not go to Africa to go to get like the backgrounds. He actually over the phone he had set up a graph paper of like what he was looking for, and he would talk to the guys that were in Africa taking pictures, and he's like, "Okay, you need to move the camera to like A5, on the graph." And so he so all the backgrounds outside of like the actual set itself, those are all rear projection of Africa. And so
not
that's
map paintings.
no, they're not matte paintings. Those are rear projection. So that's
Interesting.
why it just has this really interesting look to it. It's like, wow. Because I was wondering, how the hell did he get this shot? Like, where did he shoot this at? Because this looks amazing.
All right. Well, I
And that's how.
mean, for me, I could tell that like it wasn't like in nature. Even though the set design was like pretty amazing, but there was just like this uncanny. There's like the kind of like the uncanny valley, but for like backgrounds, and it's just
Yeah, it's like it's just off enough, but it still looks really interesting. It's not like where you're taken out of like, because who knows what it looked like,
right. Yeah, it's
that
like
long.
you're still fully immersed, and it doesn't take away from anything.
No. And we have our apes who are, looks like, they're just kind of sitting around picking off their, ticks or whatever off their back. Um, and they're getting along with the animals that are around them, but they look like they're in distress, like they're dying. They're starving to death.
Yeah, like
Um,
the monkeys, they're like picking up at the bushes, and so are like the tapirs that are that are cast as like these prehistoric pig-like things.
yeah,
But yeah, like there's like a little a skirmish, a little scuffle between one of the apes and the tapirs. So
and
yeah,
then
like
they're
so like resources are dwindling
scared.
are scarce
Yeah,
in that area.
and the one watering hole, like they get chased off by like another rival
Yeah.
monkey gang. There's the jaguar that like jumps on one of the other guy and one of the other monkeys kills them. So they're not the apex predator. They're that, especially that one group. They're on their way out until we see
Until
the monolith. And this is where like for I mean, I still don't necessarily know what's going on, but like I was always wondering like what the hell is the point of this whole scene at the beginning of the film? It doesn't I never understood that. It's like what was he trying to share here? The whole like the dawn of man sequence. It's I don't know what happened. Like they call the main monkey that I think that his name is Moonwatcher. I think that's what they end up calling him. I don't know if that's in the credits or whatever, but like it's I think the when you look at the cast list, I think they call him Moonwatcher or somewhere. I don't know if it's in the book or if it's in somewhere in the movie like that he's mentioned as Moonwatcher. Uh, but he touches the monolith, and who knows what the hell happened to him. But all of a sudden, he sees this bone, and he looks at it. And it's like with this, oh, there's this bone here, and sees it as like now it's it's like it's almost like his mind is evolving, where he takes that bone, and it's almost like, oh, I can use this as a weapon, and he attacks one of those tapirs, those and it's like all of a sudden like they have food in abundance. All the monkeys of the tribe are eating, and when that rival monkey gang comes in, it's like now I have something to defend myself. And there's that moment where Moonwatcher ends up just cracking that dude over the head, and it's like, oh, and that's where like we get like the whole like the music of that great, I forget the name of that classical song or the name of the song that's used. But he just chucks that bone up into the air, and it just it goes up, and then as it's coming down, we're fast forwarded, millions of years, and we see like that bone ends up becoming this space satellite or this space station, and that's kind of like where we start our movie in a sense. And we meet a character. This is where like the great visual effects really begin. We get that great sequence of of course Pan Am, them flying to flying to the moon, as what would be happening in the future. Pan Am would be having an airplane flight or a space flight to the moon. And the way that they film this is like so fascinating, because you have like the woman, the stewardess, she seems like she's walking kind of weird, but it's obviously because there's no gravity. And you see that pen that's floating in the air. And you want to know how they filmed that? They did it using a piece of glass. And like there's this piece of glass that they're using to kind of make the pen look like it's floating in the air. And in certain formats, if you look really hard, you can kind of see the glass. But then there's other formats, like in 70 millimeter, like I've heard that you can't even tell like how, like, it does look like this thing is floating in air. And that's kind of like where we start with some of these great effects that we're going to see throughout the movie. Now, I've watched a movie called, because we're going to see a lot of these like great, like, kind of docking scenes in 2001. There's, always, shuttles are coming in and going and landing, and we see that pretty much fully throughout the film. And I don't know why I thought of this other film that I think was trying to attempt its own version of Stanley Kubrick, but a very terrible film called Birdemic, where the initial opening scene is like
Bruce, I think that you are familiar with this movie.
Oh, Birdemic, it is so bad. Where we see like the full-on driving scene, like, and we're not cutting. No, we're gonna see the full driving scene, and we're gonna watch our character park his car. Oh, it's a good parking job. And every time we're gonna see him drive again. Oh, he's gonna park the car. It's like, I don't know why you were trying, like, in your crappy film, you're trying to emulate Stanley Kubrick. I mean, I guess it's someone to try to emulate, but you're not Stanley Kubrick, and you don't have the budget of Stanley Kubrick or the vision. Why are you trying?
You don't even have a budget for the rental car for a week.
Yeah. Oh,
Is
yeah.
that the one that changes rental cars?
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was definitely a rental car, because they lose that car halfway through the movie, and it's just like, no, that's probably the only Birdemic 2001: A Space Odyssey connection that you'll ever hear.
Okay, probably.
Unlike Birdemic, the docking scenes in this film are very, very. You're just along for the ride, and still no dialogue in the film. We actually don't get our first piece of dialogue. I think like the first 20, like almost 30 minutes of the film, no dialogue at all. It's just it's visual. Which is a very interesting, especially coming off of the last film that Kubrick did, Dr. Strangelove, where it's very dialogue heavy, and it's a very different film. This is much more visual, and so we don't get our first piece of dialogue until 30 minutes into the film, where after that docking scene, we get to the space station, and we meet one of our characters. What the hell is his freaking name? Go back. Hold on a second. I need to pull up the cast list.
Can you cut my mic for a minute?
Yeah. Hold on.
Carry on.
Yeah, so this is where we meet our Dr. Haywood Floyd, who is the I don't know know if he's like the leader of NASA or what. I don't know what he's the leader of, but he's the guy, and we see him meet up with somebody, and he is kind of like they're getting ready to go to this like meeting, and this space station is this internet. I guess it's the International Space Station, which has a Howard Johnson's and a Hilton, and of course, and he's like, I'll meet back up with you in the meeting, and because I had to go make a phone call. It was his daughter's birthday, so he's talking with his daughter, and the conversations with all the conversations we hear from the humans in this film seem very cold and distant. Like it's not really. It's almost like they're not that they don't care, but like it almost feels mechanical in a lot of ways. Did you notice that, Andy?
I could see that interpretation, but I think another way to look at it might be cautious, because I don't know exactly what the political situation is at the time. I mean, at the time of the movie, it's still within like the Cold War, and Russians are seen as the bad guys, and so here this American Space Agency you know chief or whatever runs into a colleague, but then also runs into like this Russian doctor who's like
Well,
really trying to find out like the information of what's going on the moon, but there's like there's a kind of the secrecy behind all of that.
Oh, that part I understand. Like, but I was saying, like, even with like when it comes to like Haywood Floyd talking to his daughter, it felt kind of like
right, but that also might be due to a lack of technology, because obviously the daughter talking was like pre-recorded, and he's like delivering lines to like nothing or nobody.
okay. Well, I mean, I was saying like, because I think there was like more of a reason behind that too. Because later on, when we meet our other characters, they also kind of feel like kind of more. Their speech feels very distant in a lot of ways, and maybe that's that. I don't know if that was necessarily something that was deliberate, or if it was something that was just because that was the time frame. But like you look at like Doctor Strangelove, the dialogue there was not like cold and weird. It was very passionate and funny.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's just something I was kind of thinking of. But yeah. So Haywood Floyd, he has that talks to his daughter on her birthday.
Oh,
Oh, well,
yeah,
I'll
I
call
did
it back.
something wrong. Whoops.
I'll get him back.
Okay.
We'll cut this part out.
It's really hoping to avoid doing more work or whatever.
Oh,
There he
sorry,
is.
Andy messed up.
Sorry.
Okay. You move to
But
this
you're
side.
back. So we're talking about like so Haywood Floyd.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. I gotta reset
You
up
got to
your
restart
data.
everything. Okay, tell me when you're ready.
I have to reset up your data.
That was probably my fault when I had to cut my audio.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Skype is weird because like you can mute someone's mic, but you can't. For some reason, you can't unmute them. I don't know. Just a big old headache. think we continue.
All right, ready?
We're
Um,
ready. Yeah, just continue to where you left off.
Okay. So what I was saying, so Haywood Floyd, he talks with his daughter. He ends up meeting with some of the Russian members, scientists or government officials that he knows on this space station. And Dad, what I was telling Andy, or one of the things that we noticed, or that I noticed throughout the film, is how distant or mechanical a lot of the human characters that we meet throughout the film, that how mechanical or cold or distant that they sound like. There's a lot of almost like the most human character that is in the movie almost seems like to be Hal.
Sassy
uh,
robot.
I don't know if you noticed that yourself, or if you have any thoughts on that.
I hadn't noticed that. You guys pick out a lot of different stuff that, I don't study movies the way you guys do. And I didn't pick that up. The sub dialogue that's going on is just noise. I do think Hal and the monkeys are the evolving intelligence, and Dave has his battles with Hal, and Frank, I guess, is the other character. But I didn't realize the dialogue was mechanical or short.
Right. I mean, because I think what is it? That one astronaut with Dave Frank, was it? Like
Yeah,
he got
Frank.
he got a message from his parents on his birthday. So that was pretty. That seemed kind of genuine.
I don't know. When you look at Frank's face, though, he looks so bored. It's like, who cares?
Well, maybe because he can't like actually be with them. So it's like thanks for the gesture, but like I'm here, I am,
Maybe
you
maybe
know,
that's what it is.
screaming, whipping it, flying at breakneck speed through the void. And that, it's almost like the taunt of Tantalus, where it's like here he's like billions of miles away from home, and like his parents send him a video and like with a big like birthday cake in front of him, but he can't enjoy it. It's like right there, but he can't even reach out his hand to like grab it. So
True.
yeah.
Um,
But
but
really quickly though, it was really. I don't know if you know. I didn't. This isn't my own observation. I remember watching an old analysis video a while back about this movie. But did you notice how how it started off with the two rival monkey groups at the watering hole, and then you had
yeah,
a similar thing happening with Floyd and the Russian scientists. It's like at a
oh yeah.
watering hole, so to speak.
I don't think that was by accident. I think that was
No,
kind
exactly,
of
exactly. It's like it's. I think it was like saying like it doesn't matter what era they are or like how evolved someone is. Like you're always kind of on the defensive against outsiders.
yeah. There's always going to be some tribal
Yeah, yeah.
conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously during, especially at that time, the Cold War was in full effect.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and while in this case where the dialogue is somewhat friendly, it
Mm-hmm.
is not obviously it's very
Right.
guarded
It's
still at the
right.
same
It's
time.
friendly but not warm.
Yeah. Uh, and it definitely gets a little bit more cold when they question uh, Dr. Floyd about the what's going on at this particular station on the moon, and it's like, well, there hasn't been any communication, and they also refused, to allow an emergency landing, which goes against the the
Yeah.
I don't know,
Whatever
whatever
peace agreement.
code of
Blah blah blah.
whatever, like, code that they were going by. And he's like, well, I can't divulge that information. He doesn't say, like, he's not even like, oh, there's nothing going on, or whatever. He just says, like, well, I can't divulge that information.
Mm.
Um, and we're like, okay, well, now we're wondering, it's like, well, what the hell did they find on the moon? Like, what's going on? And the we get to the briefing that Dr. Floyd starts off, and now we find out they found another monolith that had been buried for what, millions of years, that they finally found. And
Or
so
is the
now
first,
they're,
or is the first monolith?
well, that's the thing, like, where I can't, that's where I don't know. That's a good question.
Well,
Do
listen,
you think it was?
I was always operating under the assumption that it was the first monolith. That after it did its thing with the monkeys, it went and like buried itself in the moon. Kind of like in a way, like another kind of test to see if the humans could ever like reach the moon to find it again.
So you think there's only one monolith, Andy?
Yeah, or at least like because it's in proximity to the Earth. So I'm thinking that the monolith that we see in the beginning of the movie, it did its thing. It sped up the evolutionary process in the monkeys, and then it went off into and buried itself in the moon, and that's kind of like another. It'd be kind of like a test for the humans, the eventual humans, to see if they could reach the moon. And so, like
Ah,
this is kind of like a constant, a test for humanity, as it were.
uh,
That
oh,
like, now I always thought of it as a test, but I was like, I wasn't sure that of it being like that is the same monolith.
Hmm. I mean,
no, I had
again,
an
that's just how I'm assuming it is. Or
you
I've always
know
worked under the assumption that that was the same monolith.
I thought it was a superior intellect before our time that had uh, stationed on the planet, made the monolith, went to the moon, made another monolith, showing that they had been there, not necessarily as a test. This is just my interpretation, but like we go to the moon and we plant an American flag. Well, this superior intellect, whether it was an evolution of monkeys or what, they've got a monolith and they've been to these places before us.
Hmm.
That's interesting how the three of us have three different
Yeah,
interpretation meaning of the
that's
monolith. And
that's
there's
what.
one in the Northridge Mall that's clear that always throws me off. It's like, why did this one get black? I'm
I
sure
know.
it was part of the movie
Do you
set.
ever do you ever just like go like touch it to see if like it can impart like some like
I did.
radiation
When
to
it was
help you
gold,
evolve?
I got electric shock. Oh
Yeah.
no, that's the other one.
But no, it's that what that's the great part about this film, is like, there's so many possibilities. And that's what Kubrick, I think, wanted. He didn't want to, spoon feed you. He wanted you to think about, like, what is this? And um so, because I always thought, like, the monolith being, a test, like, these monoliths were placed on the earth. We had uh uh was it the apes in the Dawn of Man sequence, where they touched it and they gained all this knowledge, and from there, there's another monolith that was placed at the moon, buried. And if, like, if people, if they could reach the moon and they could achieve space travel, then there's, and obviously, like, we have, like, the whole, like, sequence where they're going to that part of the moon, another great docking sequence with they also have, like, there's the uh the scene with, like, the kind of like the space food that they had. And there's also that, like, where the 0G bathroom instructions, which I was trying to find those. I don't know where I could, because there actually was a list of instructions that they had that are real instructions, but I couldn't find like the whole list because I thought that would be because like you can't really read it in the movie, but they did actually have a list of zero G bathroom instructions that they did. But yeah, so we get another docking sequence, similar to Birdemic, of course, and they reached that part of the moon where that monolith had been buried, and there's a sequence too, like where you have all the scientists in their gear, they're on the moon, and it shifts from like these very like cinematic cameras to a handheld camera. And the person operating that handheld camera was our director, Stanley Kubrick. He was the one that was. Anytime you see a handheld camera scene, that's Stanley Kubrick. And they start to take like they find this thing. They're not sure what it is. It's like they're touching it. They're like, all right, let's take this picture with it. They take the picture, and then all of a sudden, like I don't know if it's like from them touching it, or that the sun or the sun hits it, but all of a sudden we get that like where it's like, and they're all kind of like the whatever radio beam or whatever that's hitting, like they're all grabbing at their helmets. And I, for whatever reason, I'd always thought that like whatever that sound was, it actually wiped those guys out. In reality, I guess it didn't. It was just sending out that monolith was sending out another signal.
Right.
As we find out, like there's a signal that was sent over to Jupiter, and that's where all of a sudden we switched. We've had these characters for another like 25 minutes, and then we switched protagonists all of a sudden. Now we're on our way to it's 18 months later. We're on the USS Discovery, and now we have Dave Bowman and Frank Poole and the HAL 9000 unit. I'm sorry?
Discovery 1.
Discovery
Oh, yeah.
1, yeah.
And by the way, you can get a zero gravity toilet bathroom instructions either in a poster or in a bath mat. It's amazing what the internet has.
Is it on Etsy?
Oh, that's awesome.
It's, hang on a second. Hopefully I don't screw this up. Look, zero gravity toilet.
No
Nice.
kidding. That's awesome.
The internet has everything.
Right?
God.
Carry on.
So now we're on our way to Jupiter, and we have this shot too this is another one of those just great visual segments where we see, I think it's Frank that is just running around the spaceship, and like it's just like it looks like the way it's filmed, like he's just running across the wall sideways, it's just like, and all of these visuals that Kubrick puts in, I'm just like, this is amazing, because there's no CGI, there's no there's no like it's all done with these just great,
it's all done practical.
it's all practical. It's insane like how, and it looks amazing. I know it took a lot. I mean, the all these effects took like 2 years to like kind of put together, but damn, they look great.
Yeah.
And so we and in a kind of an interesting bit, like we kind of get a little bit more story based off like we're watching a news segment of that Dave and Frank watching themselves on BBC, kind of giving their interview about like what their mission is, and we also get to meet our computer HAL 9000, and voiced by the great, I think this is one of the greatest bit of voice acting, Douglas Rain as Hal, who is perfect. I mean, you just, when you think of AI sentient computers that go haywire, like one of the great, depending on your viewpoint, one of the great villains or protagonists in film. Douglas Rain is perfect. Just that steady hello. Like it's just amazing. Hal is perfect.
Yeah. Hal, coincidentally, is one letter more than IBM.
It's funny because that is true. Now, a lot of people say that was not intentional, but I call BS on that.
Yeah.
There's
Too
too much.
coincidental to be unplanned.
Wait, what?
So
Hal, HAL, IBM. So Hal is one letter less. I think I said one letter more.
yeah,
So what comes before IH? What comes before BA?
Oh,
So that's, we think
interesting.
that's how Hal got his name.
I see.
Because IBM,
Right. That'd be clever though.
we didn't have computers back then like we do now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we put a man on the moon with supercomputers and slide rules. So
Yeah.
we're spoiled. I mean, I've got more technology sitting here on my desk right now than could be imagined in 1968 for the average person to have. So IBM was the computer company, and that the tie-in to HAL is just too close to be coincidental. Well, you can't call it an IBM computer, we'll get sued.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then some clever guy said, call him Hal. Anyhow, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No,
it
no,
seemed
no,
like
no.
a
You're
good
no.
time to talk about Hal and his name.
No, but it's just funny that like they denied that, but like there's no freaking way that's not intentional.
Yeah.
Uh, Now this is where like the film starts to kind of gain some legs a little bit because another great shot too is I think it's Frank. It's either Frank or Dave, like where they're the way that they're sitting. It's like it's where you have one character that's coming from a different direction on the spaceship, and then you have the other person that's kind of almost look like they're like they're sitting in like another direction, but like they're facing downward or they're hanging upside down and
Mm-hmm.
they're eating. Well, obviously there's no CGI. It's all practical effects. They actually are sitting up. They're sitting upside down, and they have to be very careful how they're eating food and like they're getting it's in they're getting stuff like in their it's caught in their nose and everything. It's like trying not to get food caught on the set, so they had to. So they're actually I forget who it was. If it was Dave or Frank, but they are hanging upside down. So,
Hmm.
um, during that news report, and so we learn about our main characters that now, and that this is 50 some minutes into the film, so we're halfway through, and there is later on we get obviously we had the whole birthday scene, and then we have a chess playing scene where Hal, I forget who was playing chess with Hal. I don't remember if it was Dave or Frank, um, but there has been noted chess experts who the way that Hal wins, they see where like he actually Hal made a mistake. Like he actually did not win. I don't know exactly. I couldn't tell you. I'm not a chess expert, so I couldn't tell you. But Stanley Kubrick is a chess expert. He actually used to hustle people in chess when he was a kid, and he would make money by like hustling chess. And so it makes me wonder: did Kubrick know what he was doing, and it was he was planting the seeds that Hal is starting to fail as a computer? Because the HAL 9000 is, oh, I don't make mistakes. It's
Hmm.
the perfect computer. It never makes mistakes. There's never been
Right.
an error. Yet was Kubrick already planting the seeds that the HAL 9000 was failing through that chess sequence. Now, because I know there's a bunch of videos on YouTube that talk about the whole chess sequence, and I personally can't tell you where the failure is because I don't really know chess all that well,
Mhm.
but I don't think that that's a coincidence either. I think that was done deliberately, especially someone that is so good at chess as Kubrick was.
Yeah.
But then this is like where where we're starting to see like, oh, HAL isn't just a computer. Where like now we're starting to see like maybe it is a sentient being, like where HAL starts initiating dialogue with our characters. He's interested in the art that I think it was like who's the artist? Was that Dave that was
It was
doing the
Dave.
artwork?
Yeah, it was Dave Bowman.
Yeah, where he was interested in the artwork that Dave is doing.
Right.
Oh, Dave, you've improved, Dave.
That is a good rendering.
Yeah. It's scary as hell. I'm just
Right. Yeah. Very unnerving. Just like the flat, kind of almost distant, uh, you know, like non-emotional like voice of Hal. It's just, yeah. There's nothing creepier.
Oh, it's perfect.
Mhm.
Douglas Rain like knocks this out of the park. He's so freaking good at this.
Mhm.
Um, then there's that, and then where Hal starts to is like, may I ask you a question? Can about like I'm starting to think that you have reservations about the mission, and it's like he starts kind of like probing about like these questions about the mission and like how things don't seem quite right. Like why were these other scientists put in hibernation before we even started the mission and they were trained separately? It seems kind of strange, doesn't it? And where like Dave is like, "Oh, you're doing your psychological evaluations, aren't you?" Uh, uh and there's this long pause, like almost like 30 seconds. So it's like, "You got me, Dave. Just a moment. Just a moment." And it's like he's like trying to find like it's almost like Hal's trying to find an excuse, like, "Aha, yeah, yeah, you got me." It's like,
Yeah, you got me.
oh god, it's so creepy. Now I remember because I this is also one of the reasons why I know my dad loves this movie. You always had that like you had a poster up at work with the red eye of Hal somewhere on at your desk. I remember.
Oh, it was my wallpaper.
Oh, it was your computer wallpaper. You had Hal.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd walk by and my screen would be gray with the big red eye and usually a quote. I had a few of
Oh,
them that
right.
turned into wallpaper.
Yeah. What are your
Wallpaper or
thoughts about
screensaver?
something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the two.
What are your thoughts about Hal? What do you think about him?
Uh, our AI is very, this was AI back in 1968. We were doing more of it, and I don't think we still understand it. He is on a mission, but I've just looked up the chess game because I never caught that. Yeah, does he start turning evil? Yeah, and he wants to complete the mission, but has he been programmed to do this regardless of what the crew does and he's just following orders? Or does the AI take over and does he become evil? I'm not really sure. The next time I watch it, I'll be looking at new things.
If it didn't work for the
Uh,
Nazis, it's not gonna work for Hal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I said if it didn't work for the Nazis, it's not working for Hal.
Yeah,
Just it's just following orders.
but I do like Hal and the the voice actor sounding like voice synthesis. Dave, I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave. Dave,
Just a moment.
stop,
Just
stop
a
the
moment.
Yeah, he's great, and it's very believable as audio animatronic or voice synthesis. I like him. If Hal weren't in the movie, movie wouldn't work without Hal.
Oh, of
No.
course not.
He reads lips when they're off in their little pod and they're
Mm-hmm.
talking about him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's reading their lips. So Hal, I think, is the Grand Master, and the people are just the servants.
Well,
I
one quick thing about Douglas Rain's performance, he did that all in a 9 hour voice
session.
recording. Yeah,
Hmm.
he did it one day, 9 hours. He was done.
Wow, what a pro.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's pretty
but
awesome.
I think Hal represents like another kind of like metaphor uh, in the movie for humanity, in that like humanity's gotten to the point of like kind of creating like or modifying like intelligence, kind of like how the aliens modified humanity to get them where they are. So, and I think I think Hal's a test to see if they too, maybe like like humanity's like immaturity to be able to to modify or augment intelligence.
Yeah, that's because that everything that all the life support, everything that's like how the ship functions,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't function without Hal. It's all connected to Hal.
Right, but I
Um,
yeah, but I also what I mean is like like the aliens were able to take these chimpanzees and then turn them into humans, and like here are human beings who can't even make a functioning AI system,
True. That's
and so yeah, I think Hal represents like another sort of kind of test, because that the maybe that the aliens are monitoring.
that could be too. The uh, After this interaction, like where Hal is, kind of questioning the the mindset of the crew, and about like kind of how they're having reservations because which we don't really know if that's true or not, because nothing is ever stated about like their concerns. uh but right after this is where Hal starts like telling about like that there is a failure that's going to happen within 72 hours on like one of the systems on the ship. Like I think it's like the like where the satellite dish is, or like what there's some sort of something that's going to fail
Right.
within 72 hours. And so, well, let's go check out the relay. We'll go bring it back. And this is where we get like our first kind of like space flights, essentially, like as they
Yeah,
walk out into
EVAs,
space. Yeah, the
extra
and all the
vehicle activity.
yeah, all the breathing sounds. That was also done by Stanley Kubrick. Uh, but we get these like I thought the spacesuits in this movie were awesome. They just look so cool and they're so colorful. Um,
Well, they're
but
the three were the primary colors.
it was like red, green, and blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, blue was never used. Uh,
Right.
but Dave goes out to go ahead and check out, like go out to the space relay. He's like, open the pod, Dave. Open the pod, Dave. I can't talk. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. And he walks out, and he ends up pulling out the relay and comes back, and it's actually a really tense scene because you're like, something's gonna happen. Just something you think that something's gonna happen. It doesn't, but like you're very tense. Um, it's a very tense scene. He comes back and they start running tests on that relay. Well, there's nothing wrong, or at least none that they can find. And they contact the headquarters saying that, oh well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with our HAL unit. It must be with yours. Um, And this is where the tension in the film builds, where Hal is like, I don't know how that could be, how that could happen. And it's kind of like where Hal is almost fumbling to find an excuse as to why, like, this happened. Uh, Now, do you guys think that this is because the Hal that we see on the ship, is he failing? Is it that the humans are not right? Like that they can't, even though that they can't find where the problem is, does that mean that they're searching for the right thing? Or, like, what do you think is the actual issue? Like, or is Hal lying? That's the other thing. Like, does he have some sort of ulterior motive?
God, was Hal trying to kill off all the crew members and complete the mission himself? Um, let me put it this way: the 9000 series is the most reliable computer ever made. No
Yeah,
9000 computer ever made a mistake or distorted information. I should have done that in a better Hal-like voice.
right.
Um, I think the computer is doing what he's been planned to do. And if he sees the people deviating, the plan is, I will get rid of you. This is the mission. I don't know. That's how I've always
Right.
followed it.
Right, because he's, ultimately Hal's a machine, and so, and
Yeah.
ultimately a difference engine. And so, like, if there's, if there's a component, on this mission that isn't operating in the parameters that, Hal is given, then ultimately, he has to figure like, oh, then I have to get rid of this faulty component, which is, Frank
Yeah.
and Dave.
A relay or a person. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
just the
exactly.
faulty component in completing the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I think we're already planning that seed has already been planted, that like there are different missions that we don't know of, because Frank and Dave's mission is different from those three scientists that are, or those three people that are in the pods that are already in hibernation during
Mm-hmm.
this trip.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? Like, is Hal, like, just is he doing what he is, being what his mission is? And obviously, like, Hal can complete the or we're led to believe Hal could probably could complete the mission on his own, not needing the humans with him.
Hal
uh
needs people to do his bidding for him, to
Mm-hmm.
go out and replace the antenna. The people are a necessary tool that Hal needs.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's so.
Hal is the central nervous system of the ship.
Yeah, because we already know that there's a ton of secrecy behind, like, what, because what we'll find out later in the movie, Frank and Dave had no idea what the monolith or anything like that. All they know is they're flying this ship to Jupiter. They don't know what the mission is per se. Like, they're just flying to Jupiter. That's their mission.
Right. They're pretty much the flight crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do the scientists, like, within that are in hibernation already? Do they know what the Jupiter mission is? Possibly. Were they part of, like, the crew that was on the moon that had uncovered the monolith? Possibly. We don't know their names. Um, and like you said, what was told to Hal? That's the other thing. Like, so we don't know. We really don't know what, if it's like, and we're led to believe that there's a potential failure in Hal, but I don't think so. I don't know if it's like a failure in Hal, or if he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. And
Right,
that's the
because yeah, we don't know.
scary.
Yeah, we don't know like the level of compartmentalization. I mean, we see it like in the fact that they put those three other scientists on ice before the trip, but and then like the final orders aren't given until they reach Jupiter. Or like they're prematurely given when Dave is like kind of deactivating Hal, and you get the pre-recorded message with the orders from whatever higher up is responsible for the mission.
Yeah.
So so we don't know if it's just because of faulty like system, like in terms of the compartmentalization that the brass has implemented on this mission, or is it just, or if like or if HAL is malfunctioning, or if like the crew had a psychotic break. We really don't know.
Yeah, I mean this is why you watch this movie 100 times and you might come up with 100 different ideas
Mhm.
as to what's happening. So anyway, so now that we like okay, well, Frank and Dave like they question Hal about what's going on, and I don't think that Dave is satisfied with what Hal is saying. I think he believes that okay, this computer is fucking up, but obviously he is involved in everything. So it's like, oh, Frank, I need you to help me check out like the communication system in one of the pods. And it's like, all right, yeah. And has like Hal like kind of help them get into the pod, and then he shuts off all the audio and connections to kind of hide themselves away from Hal. And this is where they and actually the idea for them to sneak, because they were trying to figure out a way to like kind of have this scene, but they didn't Kubrick wasn't sure how to do it, and so a lot of the cast and crew were just sitting around and like getting really bored. So the guy who plays Dave Bowman is like he's just bored, and he's like, and so they end up kind of cutting filming for the day, and him and Kubrick, he said like we need to do something like to kind of show the secrecy. Like they couldn't figure it out, and the guy who plays Dave came up with the idea of them sneaking off into the pod, cutting off the communications to Hal, and having that scene like where Hal is watching them, but like they, their the communications and everything are cut off. So that was the story that like I forget the actor's name who played Dave, but that was the story that he told about like him and that he came up with that idea of them being in the pod talking about disconnecting Hal, and kind of like
Kier Dulia.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of an odd name.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Sounds like
yeah, so he was the
foreigner.
one that he came up with that idea uh, for the whole pod scene,
Mm.
and but all the time that they're talking, we don't hear any dialogue, but we just see the red eye of Hal, and it's like, oh no, oh no, you just know something bad's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
it's like you kind of. I mean, now that I've seen both, but it's kind of seeing it again. You kind of wish it's the Futurama version where it's like, dang it, I wish I could read lips.
yeah,
Because there is an
uh,
episode of Futurama where they like kind of upgrade the Planet Express ship with like this new AI, and then they do kind of the same scene, and like they have a conversation where the AI can't hear it, but it's like, and you see like the AI's red eye looking at the mouths of the characters, and it's like, damn it, I wish I knew how to read lips.
yeah, and then there's they also did a Simpsons Halloween special where they the Simpsons turn their house into like
Yeah,
using
like
an
a
AI
smart
system
house. Yeah.
voiced by Pierce Brosnan.
Uh huh.
So it's kind of the same deal. It's great.
Yeah.
Uh, but the so Frank ends up going out to replace the relay. It's like, oh, we can if we'll replace the relay, and we'll watch it fail, and we'll see what the and kind of go from there. It's like, okay, and so Frank goes to replace it, and all this time, Dave is kind of like watching the monitors and all that stuff, and all we see is Frank. Just the pod just gets blown away, and we just see like Frank's air is cut off, and he just gets sent flying into space. And it's like you're like, oh shit. Uh, so and Dave in a rush, runs into like one of the other pods, doesn't take his helmet for whatever dumb reason, and which ends up becoming a huge mistake. And he tries to go after Frank, and it's just like one of those moments where it's like, oh no, you just know something bad's gonna happen, and it certainly does. Because this is where we get the moment where Hal turns on the entire crew, uh, and Dave, through the pod, grabs Frank and starts heading back to the ship. And most likely, Frank's dead. He's already dead, but like, he's trying to bring him back to the ship. And you get that where Dave's like, open the pod bay doors, Hal." "I can't do that, Dave." It's like, "Open the pod bay doors, Hal." "I can't do that, Dave." It's like, "Why not, Hal?" And it's like, and it's pretty much like that where it's like he tells him, it's like, "Although you took all the efforts to cut off contact with me, I could read your lips, Dave." It's like, oh shit. It's kind of like that oh shit moment. Um, and it's like, well, I'll go in through the emergency hatch, like, without your helmet, Dave. It's like, this this conversation serves no more purpose, Dave. Goodbye. It's like, oh God. And it's like, oh man. And while Dave is trying to figure out a way to get back into the ship, Hal is starting to cut off the life support of 3 other scientists, which is also really fucked up. You have the life systems, uh, in, like, I think they're failing, and then it's like life support terminated. It's like, oh God. So he kills off all the scientists, cuts off all the air in the spaceship, and Hal or Dave is trying to find his way back into the ship, which is also another one of those just really great scenes in the movie. Um, it's all like, he pretty much like, well, fuck, well, Frank's gone, so he tosses him back into space, lets him float off, and he starts to open the emergency hatch with the pod bay. But then he maneuvers the pod towards the spaceship, and you just see him like trying to, like, he's trying to summon up the courage to like shoot himself out of the pod into the spaceship and not die. And that whole scene of him getting, shooting himself into the ship, that's all done with like so the set was done in a vertical way, so the camera is pointing up, and it's like a good 15-20 foot set for that whole emergency area of the ship. And so they have a guy that, Dave is attached to this like some sort of like cable or rope with like knots in it. And there's a guy that's sitting obviously off camera that, he essentially like is he lets go of the rope and has Dave like kind of like float down towards the camera, and then grabs him like right at the end, at a certain point. Otherwise he's just going to keep falling down to the camera, which is a good like I said, 15-20 feet. And then like once he gets the door shut, it's kind of like he yanks him way back up towards like, towards the front. And it's like, so that whole scene, although it's all seemingly zero gravity, it's all done with like cables, like, and stuff. Like, it's really crazy how that whole scene was done. But yeah, so now we get Dave. He's pretty much, he finds his another space helmet, and it's revenge time. And this is kind of like, this scene with Dave and Hal is really interesting. What Obviously we know why Dave is going to disconnect Hal. I think this is what him and Frank were planning on doing. But do you feel bad for Hal in this moment at all? Or are you like, yeah, thank God, we got to get rid of the Hal?
Who's uh you know Mutiny on the Bounty, was he crazy or were they all after him? you
Oh,
know
good question.
um there's a little empathy for both sides, and the more they try and get rid of Hal, the more Hal fights for his position. They didn't have a strawberry incident, but yeah, you see Hal turning evil, and yeah, you have to stop him, but you guys started it,
Yeah, that's I never connected this movie to Mutiny on the Bounty, but damn, yeah, you're right. That's a very interesting thing. Is it, was obviously, like, is Hal's trying to defend himself, but, like, would he have done that had they not
Yeah.
gone against him? Like, and you don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, I've never seen Mutiny on the Bounty, but just going by context, I would have
Wait
to
a sec,
say
my speaker's messed up. What
I've
did you say?
never seen Mutiny on the Bounty. It's on my queue. It's on my
Really?
queue. Really.
Wow.
But again,
Yeah, see,
just going by context, I would have to imagine that the strawberry scene is when Dave and Frank go into that pod to have their conversation.
yeah,
Yeah,
And
it really
so
is. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, and I guess you do have a little bit of sympathy for Hal, only because he, I mean, other than basically controlling the entire ship, he's defenseless. There's like he doesn't have the ability to erect like force fields or send like electric shocks to prevent anyone from messing with his hardware. So when Bowman goes for his core, there is a sense of dread there where it's like, oh man, it's like watching a serial killer, like you know draw out his knife and like and make the first like thrust.
yeah,
Um, but I think but again, it's kind of like you kind of have sympathy for both sides in this, and you do, and then when Hal like says like I'm afraid, Dave, it's being compassionate and empathetic creatures as humans are, you can't hear those words and not feel something.
yeah,
Yeah, because I was thinking that too. It's like where, I think Hal like he is almost like he is scared for his existence.
Mm-hmm.
He is sentient. He does, and he realizes that he made a mistake, and he's trying to, like, plead for his life. Yet, because I don't know if necessarily, like, Dave or Frank really believed, and, like, obviously they've communicated with Hal for the last 18 months, but do they think of him as an actual person, or like they just think of him as a machine that's malfunctioning and we need to, like, almost like reset,
Mm-hmm.
the machine, as opposed to thinking of him as a person. Um and yeah, so like I said, you feel obviously for the humans because we're human, we're pro-human, but at the same time, Hal has a point. He's defending himself, and you feel, and especially that whole conversation, like where Dave is starting to remove his functions, and where Hal starts to revert back to, like, his default settings. Oh man, it's kind of like it's a tough scene. It's really tough, and it's perfectly done by Douglas Rain. It's just like, man. Um, and I still don't know how I feel about that whole scene. Um, yeah, it's one of those things where I feel differently about it every time I watch the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But as Hal is starting to fade away, in that the way he's doing this the song, and his this singing Daisy.
yes,
uh Which actually, the first time that computers were kind of like taught or programmed to speak, that was the first thing that was the same thing that Hal was doing. That was actually what the first computer did, was say Daisy and sing that song. But while this is happening, we all of a sudden there's a message that pops up from Frank Bowman, who we haven't seen since the beginning of the movie, and he is stating the actual mission of the Discovery and like why they're going to Jupiter. And it's just like, oh, it's like now we finally get the, or at least Dave finally gets the idea of why they're even out there. And I almost wondered too, like, what, because it's one of those things where Dave is caught in a catch-22 because all of his crewmates are dead. Hal is dead. I don't know if there's even any way back home to Earth. Yet he also does. He's the last surviving crew member that is there to complete the mission. Does he? Do you think he feels he has no choice but to complete the mission, or does he feel like, well, there's nothing else better to do? I might as well just kind of go on with it. Why do you think he goes through with the mission to Jupiter?
Yeah, it's what he's supposed to do, and complete the mission to the best of his ability.
Yeah.
And what are his options? It's not like he can turn around and go home.
Well, yeah, that's true. Because when he does leave the spaceship, all the other times that the guys have left the ship to do stuff, there's always been lights on in the Discovery. But when Dave leaves for this last time, there's no lights on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so I don't think he obviously doesn't expect to come back.
Okay.
But it's almost like, at this point, it's like he's completing the mission, but like I don't know if there's no really way to communicate his findings to the mission either. So it's almost like he's the only one that's gonna know about it. So I don't know. Maybe it's just something to do, or it's like he's just trying to. He's just like, this is his like last effort, as a character. It's like, like, well, at least I'll complete the mission. No one will know about it, but I'll complete it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Andy?
Uh, uh, yeah, I think it's one of those. You're out there already. You might as well. In kind of like, and I know this movie came out much after 2001, but in the movie Contact, Jodie Foster's character, she's going on like this journey like that's like gonna take her to like the farthest regions of like the universe, but like she continues to like call out what she's seeing and like kind of like in her like visual log, just calling just constantly calling out things. And I think that's kind of like the same spirit where it's just like for Bowman, I think it's just like I'm out here, I might as well complete it. I don't know if anyone will ever see find the recorder for this and get all the readings, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
Yeah.
But that last message from Frank Bowman, that or not from uh our not Frank Bowman, I'm dumb. Hold on one second. From Haywood Floyd, that is the last bit of dialogue in the film, because after this,
Right. It's
uh
all It's all lights
this
and sound and visuals.
this is where things get freaking nuts. And we don't know what exactly Dave Bowman goes through, but he gets sucked into some sort of, I don't know if it's a black hole or whatever the monolith has set up for him. But he gets just going through this like vortex for a good 9 minutes. I think it's like 9 minutes, this whole sequence. And you see like all these different scenes, colors are changing. We're focused on Dave Bowman's eyes, and every time he blinks, it changes color. And it is one of the most fascinating, scary, mesmerizing scenes in film. And this latter portion of the film, I think this is what a lot of people remember from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we go through that, and all of a sudden, everything stops, and we're in this. I think a lot of people deem it the hotel room.
Yeah.
Um, and all of us, Dave Bowman, he is beyond freaked out. He can't even like move. He's hyperventilating. He's freaked the fuck out, as I think anybody would be. Um, and we're looking around this room, and it's just like where everything kind of has this very like old European look to it, yet at the same time, it's very, it's everything's kind of glowing in this like weird light.
Yeah. It's like
And
I guess I would describe it as like kind of sterile.
yeah, now this is where like a lot of like the what the hell is happening in this scene. Um, my thoughts are that there, because I'm basing my thoughts based off of something similar that we see in a movie called Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, where he gets sucked into a black hole, and it's almost like he breaches 3 dimensions, and like he's in. We don't know like if it's like the fifth or sixth dimension, like where like time and space are and gravity are all kind of like entangled together, and I think something is similar is happening with to Dave Bowman, and where he is like with the apes in the beginning of the movie who evolved and changed, that Dave Bowman, as the human he's the new ape, and he's evolving because of his interaction with the monolith. And I don't know how much time has regressed, like whether it's an actual 70 years or whatever that he's in there, or if the amount of time that we actually see while he's there, like that next like 7 minutes of the movie, if like through those 7 minutes he is evolving in those 7 minutes to become the Star Child. Um, what are your guys' thoughts about what's going on in this scene?
And I'm looking at my notes here, and I was following along as you were talking. Yeah, he gets sucked into time and space and ages quickly. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, we're rapidly approaching the end of the movie. Um, and I think it's not just the cycle of life, but the cycle of, like I think you alluded to, are we going to start all over again with apes and try again? I don't know,
Yeah.
and I think that was deliberate. I think Stanley Kubrick wanted you to walk away, and I've never read the book, and
Neither have I.
I think the book handles certain things differently, um, but that's as he is sucked through time and space. Um, I think we're going to wind back up, and I haven't seen Interstellar. Maybe that answers part of it. But you walk away with these questions, just talking about 2001. And I think that was an evolution of life, not just Bowman's life as we know it. And it's going to start again and some, maybe as apes and evolve again. Who knows? The monolith was there at the start and the monolith is there at the end. Maybe that's our God. I don't know. I mean, you can take a lot out of it.
Yeah, you really that's the thing. It's like because there's the
And we
idea
really
there.
ought to have a doo-wah when we say the monolith.
Yeah, right, yeah, it is like the Blue Star in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not as good, but
No. Andy, do you have any thoughts about like the kind of like the final scene and what's taking place?
I mean, honestly, not really.
Not really.
Not really. Again, it's like it's left so ambiguous that that you know you could you can literally slap anything onto it and it could kind of make sense. Um, but maybe it might be just like another cycle. Like the human, yeah, it might be like the human beings are become the new apes, and and they need the monolith to kind of jump them to like the next point of their evolution, and that's what we get in the form of the Bowman Star Child. Uh,
Right.
um, or it's just like maybe it's just the what is it? Maybe it's just the I don't know the monolith. Uh, I don't know. Just yeah, start like again, like maybe restarting the cycle. Uh,
Yeah, like I said, it's a good question,
yeah.
and obviously there have been articles and essays and everything kind of like written about like what exactly the hell is happening in this movie, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the fun part of the movie. It's I don't think that there is a definitive this is the real answer, and I think like that's what Kubrick wanted. He it's not ambiguous for the sake of like I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I think because no, there's a lot of
Right,
movies
right,
that
right, right.
they say they're ambiguous. Like, no, you're just a shitty filmmaker. That you didn't do you didn't do the your writing homework essentially. Like, and it's ambiguous because you had no idea what was going to happen. But I think that there's enough where he is doing deliberate and like there's directed ambiguity is like with Hal like is he evil, is he not, like, and there's a little bit of ambiguity there, and because there's a lot of good direction and good thought that goes into this movie, when things are like more like you just don't know like what exactly is taking place with Dave Bowman. Is he becoming the next evolution of man? Like he's becoming like now a Superman of some sort, or like or is this just like another it's a reset for humanity, and like whereas like it's almost like the movie goes back into a cycle. You could almost like where right as the movie ends with the Star Child, all of a sudden we have it's you go right back to the monkey scene at the beginning of the movie, and it's a reset. That's a possibility too. um and that's where like watching this 5, 10, 15, 100 times you might come up with something different. um, and this is one of those films that's great cinematic archaeology. You've seen the film without seeing the film, and there's so many people out there that are Kubrick fans and fans of this film that have talked about it ad nauseum, and it's fun kind of having like it's almost like a community of people uh, discovering 2001 for the first time, and or like people who've like my dad who saw it when it came out, and we're all we can all kind of come together to talk about it and kind of work through that puzzle that Kubrick has left for us, and it's fun. And I hope we don't solve the puzzle.
Yeah, it's it's amazing. It was 54 years ago when you said that the other day, and I said, No, it can't be, because like it's a great film and it still holds up today. Um,
It
Absolutely.
looked honestly, this film could have come out today, and it looks great. It's just
and
it looked amazing.
the special effects and the way they were done, and obviously when your average person is watching the movie, you're only seeing what's on the screen, but reading it and watching it today, we know a little bit more. And you brought a lot to the table with how things were shot. Oh wow, that's yeah, for 1965 through 68, that was cutting edge stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And especially because there's a lot of the stuff that we see in the film that ended up becoming real. Because this movie came out before we got to the moon. This came out before we had, obviously like Skype and like video phone calls and stuff like that. And a lot of the scientific ideas that him and Arthur C. Clarke came up with in writing the screenplay, came from the '64 World's Fair. So these were all like ideas that people had, and it's like, well, let's expand on those. Like, what would that look like in at that time, you know, 50, 40, 50 years, in the future, like how
Yeah.
would that look? And damn, if like some of the stuff hasn't come true in some way.
The same could, excuse me, could be argued with, Clockwork Orange, 1984, a lot of these sci-fi type movies that, you go back and read them today and you go, we're closer than, you know, back in school when I read 1984, George Orwell's 1984, I'm going, yeah, right. I go back and read it now. It's like, wow, we're way closer than we want to be.
Yeah, Brave New World is another one, like Al
Yeah.
by Aldous Huxley. It's
And
another
like you
piece of
said, this was, before we landed on the moon. And um, yeah, it's a neat movie. And that we're still talking about it and it's still relevant 54 years later. Pretty
uh,
good piece of
yeah,
film.
yeah, great movie. Um, any final thoughts on 2001, guys?
I got nothing.
Um,
Anything?
Andy?
Huh? Oh no, I got nothing, dude. I left it all on the
Okay.
field.
No, I
I
just,
left it all on the.
it's, um, it's a story on evolution and, you can bring theology into it if you want and just let it soak in or just enjoy it for a movie. It's one writer's opinion. But yeah, I enjoyed it and um, it's been a long time since I first saw it. Um, and the Cinerama Dome, have you ever been there, Robert?
No, I mean, I've seen it. I've never actually seen a movie in there.
Yeah. And I think it's closed, but I think it's being renovated.
I hope.
Um, you sit back and you're going, you almost have to do this with your head to watch the screen. It's so big and so bigger than life. Um, it it was a great movie, and it got me thinking about my dad a little bit while we were talking about it. And yeah, enjoy it. And evolution and space travel and theology and computers and Galaxina, they all go together.
Yeah. uh, well, let's give our ratings for 2001. Dad, why don't you go first?
I'll give it it's I enjoy it on its own level, so I'll give it a 4. I'm not, as evidence to this podcast, and I'm not huge on that genre movie, but that one is important and it's good. Maybe for the genre, I'd give it a 5. But for me, if you were to say, let's watch a movie, it's 2.5 hours. It's a long movie. There's long periods where you're just being treated to scenery with no dialogue, so it's interesting. I'll
There's
go with a 4.
there's
Huh?
40 minutes. There's 40 minutes of dialogue in the film.
Okay. Out of 2.5. So 2 hours of the
Oh
movie.
man.
Yeah. And Hal's an interesting character. Um, and yeah, especially after something like this, kind of gets you thinking, yeah, was he evil? Was he programmed to complete a mission? Did he start breaking down? Dave, my mind is going. I can feel it, Dave. It's so we'll watch it again sometime with a different set of eyes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Andy, why don't you give your rating?
Yeah, I'm gonna come up just a little bit above your dad. I'm gonna give it 4.5. Just because of what is it? The special effects and like the visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably honestly this to me is just so. This is just one of those like iconic, you got to see it movies, and
Mhm.
obviously it's not going to be for everyone. But this is a 5-star movie for me. It's 54 years later, it's still one of the most visually impressive movies I've ever seen. It's still like compared to like movies today. I There's a lot of movies that don't look as good as 2001. Um, you have like I said, great. Many of the actors are sometimes this is their only film that they did was 2001, or at least that the only thing that they're known for, and yet we get great acting. Obviously, Douglas Rain really steals the show as Hal, um, and this is just one of those films that you can watch over and over and over again, get something new out of it every time, and I can't take away anything from it. It's great. Uh, Obviously, like it is a very slow paced film, but it's deliberately slow paced. It's not just slow because like, oh, let's just have this boring movie or we don't know. We're too full of ourselves. It's actually very deliberately done. And hell, I mean, like I said, 40 minutes of dialogue in the whole film, and half of that is like it doesn't really advance the story in any way. You but despite all that, it's still great. And yeah, like I said, I got to give it a 5. But anyways, that is our episode. We talked about some great movies. Galaxina 2001. I'm very thankful that my dad was able to come on and talk about these things. Even it is outside of his normal realm. But that's okay. It's I'm glad we got to talk about two films that him and I have watched together many times.
I'm
And
deeper than you realize at times.
yeah, Andy, always happy to have you on. The podcast wouldn't happen without you.
That is
Dad,
correct.
I know you're a car care products aficionado. How could people reach you on the interwebs?
I'm on social media, Instagram at Bruce for Adams, Facebook at I think it's just Bruce Papp. Um, yeah, if you need car care products, give me a holler. Space care products, give me a
Yeah,
holler. Um,
and plus you're plugging Adams already. I see your shirt, so
yes, I am. Yeah. So thanks for having me on, guys. It's always a blast. Gives me something to do and enjoy. talking about these movies, learning different things. I think we should consider getting Andy to watch Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah.
It's in the queue.
But yeah, that's we're glad to have you on. And for if you're interested in reaching out to Andy or myself, you can hit us up on Instagram, Circle of Jerks Podcast, on Twitter at Podcast COJ. Letterboxd, we have our movie reviews on there. That's also at Podcast COJ. And if you're interested in seeing our live stream, happens every Tuesday around 6 o'clock. It's called Nocturnal Transmissions. And if you're interested in some gaming goodness, you can watch me play some old NES and Super Nintendo games on Up by Up Down. And we will see you on the next episode.
Deuces.